Andy Odell from Clutch and Mark Budreski from Paydiant. So if you guys come on up. All right, so Jack's done his intro, so we're going to start with Andy. Just spend a few minutes, tell us about what you do and what you care about in this marketplace.
Sure. So Clutch is a consumer management platform. We work with about 700 retailers across 14 countries today. And for those retailers, we're doing a whole host of things. We're supplying their mobile capability to market. We're powering their loyalty solution in-store and online, as well as in social outlets. And we also power their stored value platforms in most cases. So essentially, we're unifying all of this disparate data that marketers have historically struggled to unify and then put back to work. So the unifying of that data, which is typically stored in disparate systems, is sort of the first value add that we bring to the table as a solutions provider, other than the primary capabilities that we're deploying for them. On top of that, we have a SaaS-based solution that actually allows them to take that now unified data, attribute it to the individuals that are creating the data, slice and dice and segment those individuals in real time, and then on top of that, create automated marketing tools so that the marketer can now actually personalize the marketing endeavor through a multitude of channels, in-store, online, through mobile, through social, in a very personalized, hyper-relevant way at scale. So essentially, that's what we do, and that's what we are as a platform.
Great, thank you. Mark?
Good morning, everyone. I work at Paydiant, and Paydiant is a little bit different than a lot of the mobile wallet providers that are out there. So I'll tell you a little bit about why when we get into some of the Q&A here. But essentially, we don't have our own app. We're completely white labeled as a mobile payments, mobile commerce provider to primarily big brands and banks and FIs. So if you're a brand and you have a loyalty program, you do ads and offers, you want to deeply engage your customers, it really makes sense to try to tie all of these disparate systems together inside of your own application. And so we're facilitating that. We're like sort of like the Intel Inside for mobile payments. So we're working with companies like Harris Teeter, Subway, Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt, some banks like Cap One, Amex, et cetera. And they're all tying together payments in a framework that they feel can address their individual needs as a brand and drive deeper engagement, deeper brand equity, and they can control the experience themselves. So we think there's a lot of value in what the aggregate wallets or the meta wallets are doing, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, I'm sure, on the panel. But we also think there's a huge opportunity, right, for the brands who are investing millions of dollars in their own programs, their own marketing initiatives, to drive deeper engagement with mobile payments as part of their own process. And they can do unique things inside of their own applications, like steer people toward their private label credit cards or their gift cards. And these are some things that some of the bigger aggregators can't do very well. And so we think that with the data that the brands and the merchants can obtain and acquire through mobile payments, they can start to make a lot of smart choices about who their high-value customers are and how they want to engage with those customers. So we've been around for about 3 years. We got about 150 people, and we're headquartered in Boston, and we're looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about mobile payments and mobile loyalty today. Thank you.
Great, thanks, guys. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then hopefully that'll get some questions coming from the audience. And you know, there's no question that Apple changed the user experience with the iPhone a number of years ago, and so you know, people have certain expectations, and one of them is, you know, I want to use my phone, but maybe the issue is, you know, I walk into the store and it's like, all right, which wallet, which app do I open? You know, the sort of the confusion. But when we talk about wallets and aggregating, if you will, you know, it's nice to know that Apple knows I'm in the Starbucks. But at the end of the day, retailers don't really like to enable other retailers. they're very territorial about their customers. So with respect to loyalty and, who owns the data and who owns the customer's loyalty? Is it the merchant or the wallet provider? Let's start with Mark, and we'll work back this way.
Yeah, so in our dealings with the big brands that are out there, they're highly engaged with outside consulting firms and payment consultants. And one of the consultants who we've seen a lot has summed it up quite simply as the one who enrolls is the one who controls. So if you don't, be the person or the entity that enrolls your customer in your loyalty program, you're essentially giving it up to somebody else to do for you. And then you lose control. So with Apple Pay, we think it's great, right? It's a reinforcing mechanism for everybody in the payments industry to start to really ignite the fire that's going to lead to, who knows what it's going to be in terms of last-inch technology, who knows what's going to be in terms of Apple's next generation of wallet. But right now, for the brands, we think it's just a huge opportunity. If they don't take control of that opportunity and seize it, they'll be disintermediated. And there's nothing wrong with accepting Apple Pay, but if you want to get good data and you want to really understand who your high-value customers are, who the ones that you should be targeting with your marketing messages, who are the customers that have the propensity towards spending more when they're using a particular device, when they're in a particular location, when they're doing a particular activity. All of that data can be tracked within your own mobile app. So we think that loyalty engagement through the mobile wallet is just a huge opportunity that shouldn't be missed by the retailers.
I think you bring up some interesting points. I think the underlying question is really loyalty and data. And when we look at how loyalty is deployed and ultimately how the data is leveraged, at the end of the day, the data does belong to the retailer when it's their own program that I'm participating in as a consumer. Now, if I opt to use Google Wallet or Apple Pay or other, then obviously there's an inherent degree of loyalty I have with that platform as well. Consumers are ultimately the owners of their data in the sense that their behavior is creating the data that we are all looking to mine and otherwise monetize. So I think there's an inherent control aspect that we have to allow the consumers to have. But I think the best way for retailers to combat the concern about data is to deploy your own loyalty solution if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, it may be time to revamp it because loyalty has really taken on a whole new context. And there's a lot of technology and a lot of really compelling program design that's out there that is dramatically increasing the response rates and very predictably moving consumer behaviors in a multi-tiered, multi-dimensional program. I think the challenge that most retailers have had is their programs for loyalty are one-dimensional. You could spend $10 a visit, he could spend $1,000 a visit, and essentially they're both getting communicated to in the same exact way. They're getting treated the same way. And I think consumers are really starting to expect more. So I think if you want to control or gain access to data, the best way to do that is to deploy a solution that encourages consumers to use your program rather than others.
Good morning. So in the wallet, I think the oft-used term, the wallet wars, my view is that the consumer is going to dictate the winners. I think Google and Apple have this inherent advantage of the operating system. And I think that's a pretty high hurdle for brands to overcome. And so I don't think brands should say, we're not going to do our own approach. But I do believe that it's not an either or, it's an and. So if you look at, everybody always talks about Starbucks and the massive momentum that they created with mobile payments, which is now $1 billion business for them. And by the way, payments from wallet is growing faster than payments just from the app, which is probably just because they're starting from a smaller base. But think about how many customers probably didn't go to Dunkin' Donuts because of the fact that they could just go in. Stored value almost creates this fake currency phenomenon in people's heads. And so if I can go in and just, wave my phone in front of the cash register and pay, there's an inherent sort of brand attachment to that's real and valid. And so, Dunkin' Donuts has done a great job catching up, and they're part of MCX, and they have an app that you can pay with, and they're also in Passbook and Google Wallet. And I think that brands have to have a strategy to be where their customers are, and not try and control, like, well, we're not going to go into Google Wallet and we're not going to go into Apple because we want to own all this data. They could find themselves in a really deep hole really quickly in like 2 or 3 years, by ignoring the operating system. And so I do think Google Wallet and Apple have an advantage. Personally, from that's just my opinion, and we're agnostic, right? So we have a module of our platform called Wallet Manager, and if Samsung Wallet were to get massive scale and adoption, then that's important that we're allowing marketers to create a presence in whatever wallet is being utilized the most by consumers.
Okay. Thank you. I want to shift a little bit toward in-store. We all love our phones and apps and the ability to buy my coffee or whatever, but we're coming up next year with the whole EMV deadline. So there is going to be a change in the way things are done in the store. The traditional POS seems to has been the logical focal point of where do we bring things together, mobile and normal traditional or legacy ways to pay. Is this sort of a tipping point in the industry to say, all right, retail industry, maybe we need to start with a greenfield approach? Is there a better way, or is this an opportunity for mobile to become maybe the primary function of how we pay, as opposed to an add-on to an existing system? Andy, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the big, so it's an interesting question. I mean, obviously in-store is changing. And again, we can talk about Apple and how disruptive I think they've been with their approach to retail. I think that they've really created a whole new way of conducting retail business. You walk in, there's nothing that breaks your eye line. You can see from one end of the store to the other. Every individual employee is clearly identified with brightly colored shirts, and they can check you out and do all that great stuff. You can actually check yourself out. So I think they're kind of painting a picture for what retail could look like. And obviously, the mobile experience is a big part of that. Their point of sale is a mobile point of sale. I can check myself out with my mobile app. So I think mobile is going to become a much more pervasive experience, either consumer-led or employee-led. But mobile is definitely, I think, going to change the way that we do commerce. But taking a broader perspective, I think what a lot of retailers are facing challenges with today, and I can speak to that based on what we're experiencing with our own clients, is that the old way of doing business just doesn't really work anymore. It's very siloed. You've got an e-com team that's focused on consumers. You've got an in-store team that's focused on consumers, and this new mobile channel that everyone's kind of trying to figure out. And the reality is they're all kind of measuring KPIs, but the reality is I'm shopping through the e-com experience, I'm shopping in store, and I might also be participating in mobile, but those organizations are looking at me as 3 distinct individuals, not one individual that's using those 3 channels. So the people in the process, and to a certain extent the technology that retailers are using behind the scenes to manage the consumer experience is really outdated. And I think there's a lot of effort to wrestle with that and unify those systems, both from the CMO's perspective, from the CTO's perspective, and ultimately the finance group as well, because they need to be able to reconcile these channels and understand who's doing what so that they can anticipate the ROI as well as the technology upgrades required.
Jack?
Yeah, I'll go just because I have a very similar view and somewhat related. I think, I don't think there's going to be like this windfall transition moment where everybody's using their phone to pay. I think the adoption really depends on how sophisticated the integrations are, to build on what Andy was saying. So if you can, and this goes back to my remarks about personalized experiences, if you're pulling in data from a CRM system and a point of sale system and integrating that with email. If all these systems are talking to each other, which is easier in a world, of APIs, you're going to create a better customer experience. And then as a consumer, I'm much more likely to use my phone because it's easy. It's remembering my purchase history, and therefore it's popping up an offer that's particular to my loyalty profile that I'm interested in. It's making me aware of the product that's on sale that I never would have known about. So there's, where there's utility. We always talk about, like, with apps, tons of apps are downloaded once and never looked at again. And the apps that are sort of everyday apps are, part of your life. And there's a, high utility to them. So I think the utility in payment will come from, it will be driven by how sophisticated an integration strategy is by a retailer, right? So, you can ingest data from a CRM system to create these personalized experiences, but the more information that's based on, the better consumer experience and the more likely I am to adopt the behavior in a much quicker fashion.
Mark?
Yeah, I think everybody is starting to understand that mobile payments are not easy. In fact, they're very hard because of these issues that we're talking about with legacy systems, with POS systems and terminals that haven't been upgraded in years, with software updates that layer and layer and layer on top of each other. It makes creating these tight integrations a challenge for many people. And so a lot of companies that have kind of come and gone or trying mobile payments, they'll come in and they'll put their own system in. But in reality, at scale, with the big, tier 1, tier 2 retailers, they're not going to be ripping out systems anytime soon to support a mobile wallet right now. So what we do, that's the hardest part of our job, is really creating a seamless integration into those systems. The thing that EMV is helping to do is create some urgency around the upgrade of the infrastructure that can potentially support not only chip and PIN, but also a QR code or NFC or BLE or whatever it might be. So I think now there's hope amongst a lot of the budget holders in IT that manage POS systems for these big companies that, hey, you know what, we have a good reason to go and do this upgrade now, whereas before it was really hard for us to justify that. So EMV is actually helping to propel that forward. And we're seeing things like Verifone has a solution called Point, which abstracts a lot of the logic away from the point of sale system and places it at the terminal where you type in your PIN or you see a QR code or you swipe your credit card. And so you can actually go around the point of sale system in a way and use that terminal to talk to the cloud. And so we're seeing tons of activities. If we can abstract as much of this stuff away from the terminal and the point of sale, it becomes much more secure, much more scalable, and you can get all that stuff into the cloud, whether it's a payment credential, a token, as much of it as you can move away from the physical infrastructure in the store because of the breaches that we've seen with Neiman Marcus and Target and everybody else. It's a good thing. So this EMV initiative, I think, is helping everybody in a way, and I think mobile payments is one way that you can potentially mitigate some of the requirements around EMV, but it's going to be, to Jack's point, it's going to be a while before all this stuff starts to shake out too.
Okay, thanks, guys. Audience, do I have some questions from you guys for our panel? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. When we approach loyalty, and maybe this is sort of a level set for the room, we're really talking about an enrollment program. So this is a program where I, as a consumer, decide to opt into and give you willingly all of the data that you're asking for, and just ask that you use it appropriately and recognize me for the value of the data I'm providing. So that's what I consider when I talk about loyalty, because at the end of the day, I think there's been a misnomer or a misstep in deploying loyalty historically. It's not an acquisitional tool. That's really what the purpose of stored value is. And coupons and these other offers, that's really how you acquire customers. And I think a lot of retailers and other consumer-facing companies have used the construct of loyalty inappropriately to try and acquire new customers, rather than engage customers that already present value and already provide some degree of repeat business. So we look to focus on sort of the middle and upper part of the pyramid rather than the bottom. And it sounds like the experience you've had is less about a loyalty program, if I understood you correctly, and it's more of like an acquisitional marketing platform. And those can obviously be have the counterintuitive reaction than I think they were intended to create.
Yeah, just one other quick point on that. It sounds like perhaps the implementation of that particular program wasn't done very well because TV purchases are not something that happen frequently.
One every 10 years.
Right, so Andy just said 1 every 10 years, right? And it's probably about right. So you probably have experienced just a poorly implemented loyalty plan, and it may be because they don't have the data or they just haven't implemented a system that recognizes what the SKU is that you've purchased.
That's what I was going to say. It's I think that's just a bad CRM strategy.
Yeah.
Right? And it sounds like a retargeting data dump. And but to link this back to what we were just talking about in terms of integration, they probably don't have integrations with their data warehouse, hooking up to the email system so that it's feeding for that appropriate experience. So the integrations are so key to remember that this is the most powerful and intimate experience that you can create, right? It's my phone. Don't mess with my phone. Don't put something in front of me that I'm not going to like, because I will hate you, right?
Hell, delete you.
Yeah, it's exactly what you experienced. And so that intimacy and power needs to be respected with a more strict strategy that's, more tightly based on, real, good, personalized, powerful experiences based on my profile. Otherwise, don't do it.
Okay, sure. So
Yeah.
let me restate that. Just, in my mind, it's retailers are making an investment in this. How do they future-proof it so that a year from now or 2 years from now, they're not going through this again? Because it's not something that any of them want to focus on. They want to sell. They don't want to deal with technology.
Yeah, a lot of this, well, my first reaction is I always say to my company, the future is cool, right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot that can happen. But I think a lot of it is open architecture with fluid environments that are really flexible, right? So there's this dawning of like really open architecture, open API strategies, and layering those on this rigid, really sort of fixed hardware, ecosystem. And so, we're shifting. It's like the big movement to the cloud, right? Everything's shifting towards extremely flexible and easy to manage and maintain. And so, just to throw out like the Internet of Things, everything's going to be connected, right? Everything's going to be connected. So your data strategy becomes paramount, right? And it doesn't matter. Like, you can't predict. No one would have thought that Apple would have announced a watch. I mean, everybody knew the watch was coming, but the fact that you can scroll through Passbook and you can get a little notification of your loyalty card on your watch, like I didn't see that coming, right? So these things are going to happen quickly, and I just think it does come down to your data strategy, because you can't be able to predict what the next form factor will be, to your point. So as long as you can be open and flexible to go after that where the consumers are with an accurate, personalized experience, who cares what it is?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, part of our strategy is to try to have an interoperable, very open architecture as well. And one of the reasons for that is because each of the different brands and each of the different categories we work in has a different use case for mobile and loyalty. So, for example, at a drive-through, Bluetooth Low Energy could be awesome, right? Because you've seen the McDonald's thing where they stick the Verifone terminal out the window on a stick, and everybody's like, what? Is that real? Like, are they really going to put a terminal out the window? Bluetooth Low Energy would allow you to just keep your phone in the car and create a connection between the terminals so that you could either open up the wallet or even pay with BLE2. So we're actually doing that today successfully. The problem is nobody has the hardware for it, so we've actually built our own hardware. The point is you got to keep it open and leverage the cloud. These guys nailed it. It's all about the cloud, keeping everything up there. That's where it's going to be.
Yeah, and by the way, McDonald's is shipping 2,000 Apple scanners. I was surprised to see them as one of the first sort of merchant partners with Apple Pay. And but when you think about it, just being able to drive through and do this and pay, as opposed to like how many times have you been handed change and the quarter drops, and you're like, whatever. And so, it is a much more convenient experience for the consumer.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess one thing that I wanted to kind of bring this back before my last question, or unless we had another one from the audience, is Jack dropped some cash on the floor here, and I don't know if that's meant that I'm going to ask him some nice questions.
Right after my comment,
or
dropping money.
is that a comment about how far we are from everything being mobile?
That's fine.
I still carry cash, but I'm a little bit older. I think the one thing maybe that I'd like to close with is scalability. We've talked about Pep Boys and McDonald's and some really big brands, but what do you guys see, is in the future, even in the short term, for your independent retailers and smaller and medium-sized retailers when it comes to this whole mobile thing? Are they going to be, kind of bringing up the tail 10 years from now saying, yeah, maybe I should do something with mobile?
I think you're going to have the best answer, but I'll go first. I think they have actually a huge advantage when we're talking about flexibility of, technology going forward. If you go to some of these, I'd say smaller chain, 30, 40 stores, I don't know, you go into like Protein Bar here in Chicago, the point of sale systems that you're seeing are literally just an iPad. So they're following like the Apple lead and sort of trying to minimize their infrastructure CapEx. But inherent in those systems is better customer engagement and better customer experiences, better targeting. And so, we always talk about, phone adoption and mobile adoption in Africa. They're leapfrogging desktop. There is no desktop. I feel like the small independent retailers have a big advantage not having the incumbent infrastructure, and they can go forward in this sort of lightweight environment, and it's a huge CapEx advantage over whomever their competitors might be.
Yeah, I think the challenge that the SMB space sees in general is a lot of times they're owner-operator organizations. So, Hank's too busy making pizza to actually figure out how to grow his business. So his approach to marketing is paying a bunch of guys to walk around and stuff your mailbox with menus. And they know that that's not really an effective way for them to grow, but they feel incapacitated. They don't feel like they have access to technology in a way that they can manage, because they're very busy. They're working 18, 20-hour days, and that they can afford, because typically their marketing budget might be annualized at $400. So, the SMB space is really, really challenged, and I think that there are a big portion of them that have an appetite for growth and have an appetite for technology, especially technology that allows them to understand who their customers are, number one, beyond their face, and ultimately how to engage them in a way that is personalized. A lot of them threw a lot of wasted dollars at Groupon in the sort of fool's errand of thinking that they're going to acquire new customers in the process, and what they found out is they just gave away margin to existing customers that they already had. So we've actually been spending a lot of time as an organization developing technology and solutions for that SMB space, and we're actually please keep it between us, but there's a press release going out middle of the month here where we've actually automated an entire platform that supports the SMB, that enables them to participate in Google Wallet and Passbook and Clutch and other aggregated mobile wallets with a shotgun approach, but also gives them a lot of the consumer management aspects that we provide to our enterprise clients at scale. So now the retailer can understand who is my customer, and then we have a series of templated approaches that enable them to engage them through a multitude of different sort of thought processes. The challenge is time and money.
Yeah, I mean, we have an approach that's more top-down, but we're starting to see now that there's a lot of value in Apple Pay and Google and other wallets for the smaller merchants as acceptance locations, right? Because to Jack and Andy's points, that they don't have the resources, the time, or the money to build their own custom app that they're going to drop into the App Store. But why wouldn't they want to engage, through being innovative and forward-thinking and having the ability to accept an Apple Pay or Google Wallet in their stores. So we think there's an opportunity for those players. There's probably also an opportunity, and we're doing a lot of testing with the banks right now because banks want to have their own mobile payment system inside of their apps. So on a local level, you go to your dry cleaner, you go to your pet store, you go to the car wash, and you have a local bank. They're going to start to put payments inside of their apps, and they're going to do more grassroots community outreach, to get consumers to come into their geo where they can use their mobile wallet too. That's going to take some time, but we've actually been doing a lot of pilots in sort of college towns and areas where there's a really good propensity for that to happen, and the results have been very good in terms of cart lift and increased loyalty and frequency and velocity and all that.
All right, great. Well, thank you, guys. Our time is up, and I appreciate your contributions and comments.
Thank you.